$50,000 worth of cameras that we don't have a microphone stand.
Okay, this is a problem solver.
There's restrictions, you know, there's limits
You
now.
want me to hold these? Because I can hold them.
That would look a little silly.
Yeah, okay.
All right. You know what,
Doesn't look silly when, Linda runs that.
Well, no, she also may sing better than
Yeah, no, without question. All right, so what's the first question?
everybody okay? Hang on a second.
We all have our white balance and everything?
That's
Oh.
right.
Okay.
Matt, we know who you are, but just in case anyone else listens to our tape, first and last name, new title, please.
All right, Matt Dunlap from Old Town, Secretary of State of Maine.
Thank you for that. My first question, not the poll workers, the ballot counters. Who are these folks and how are they trained to do this recount?
Well, we actually give them the overview of how to do it. They come from the candidates themselves. So the campaigns, the parties will find people who have done this before, who are pretty good at it. We do recounts every year. It's not really rocket science, actually. It's a matter of breaking ballots and organizing them, breaking them into lots, and then sorting first place votes between the two leading candidates. And then the next round, we'll look for the second place choices from those other candidates that did not make it through the first round. So it's really just a matter of sorting. It's not terribly complicated work. And these are all volunteers. They come from the campaigns themselves, which is something I think the public doesn't really realize. They think that we do the counting. We don't. It's actually the campaigns that do the counting, so they see it for themselves and they count their own ballots.
So, but it obviously adds at least one degree of difficulty by making this ranked choice. How tough is this and complex is this going to be?
We thought this out quite a bit, and I think that really, in terms of the complexity, it's counting in different cascades, in different rounds, whereas before in typical recounts, you just look for votes for candidate A and votes for candidate B, and you come up with a total. In this case, we're coming up with additional totals, because you have to count the first place votes, and then you also add in the second choices in the next component of counting. So it's a little bit more, but it's no more difficult, really.
Some folks spotted perhaps a handful of contested ballots. What's the vetting process if those were to come in play to decide the race?
Well, we are putting those aside. We're not doing disputes one at a time at this point. We're going to put all the disputes aside and look at those after we finish a community's ballots. That the attorneys can ballot because of a stray mark or something like that. This is something that was done years ago when we were implementing the Help America Vote Act, and part of the Help America Vote Act was clarifying with some intensity what actually constitutes voter intent, so that you don't dismiss ballots, like I say, for things like squiggles or circles. Voters sometimes don't follow the instructions. This is the reality that we face when we're doing these types of tabulations. They don't fill in the oval. They might make a check mark in it, or they put an X through it. Sometimes they'll underline the name or make a circle around the candidate. So these are the things that are, with the new tabulating systems, they do pick up those as votes. But that's why you sometimes see some of these numbers change a little bit, because the tabulator can't discern a vote. They won't be able to tell if you cross out one, you make a mistake, and rather than get another ballot, you just mark the other candidate. It won't necessarily pick that up, and that's where the human eyes really come into play and can make that discernment, and the law then informs what constitutes a vote in that case. So that's what you do with the disputes, is that at the end of a community's count, the lawyers will get together and they'll try to find agreement on what those ballots are telling us.
When you did the first ranked choice count, it was you took all the ballots in, then ran it. So you had the ranked choice count of the whole CD.
That's correct.
Now you're doing it town by town.
That's correct.
So you don't have a result, town by town result to compare against, do you, from the machine count?
Well, actually, we do. We can break out the rankings by town, or at least the cast vote records by town, and that's what we'll be comparing against.
Okay. Does it make any difference the way you're doing it with the final result? You just do it town by town and then add them all up?
Pretty much.
Was it a head scratcher at one point to figure out how in the world do we handle this?
Yeah, we did have to contemplate this quite a bit, and this is governed by our rulemaking process when we are talking about how you do the recount. When we were first talking about ranked choice voting, this was the part that was hardest to contemplate, which was how do you do the rankings, and to actually do the rankings by hand on a statewide basis would take about a month. And the technology has afforded us a much simpler way of getting the information fed, and we were able to get it all loaded in and done in about 5.5, 6 days. So using the technology makes it a lot faster, but it's really basically the same process.
How do you assure folks, the public, this process and its integrity, since it is campaign workers, campaign volunteers doing the ballot?
Well, we've said right from the very beginning that our friend here is transparency. This is why it's a public process. Anyone can view it. You have the campaigns with their legal representatives and their volunteers who are actually doing the work. So I think this actually is the height of integrity of the process. That there's nothing that's not available to the public. One of the questions we've gotten a lot here in the last couple of weeks is, how are these second place votes been allocated? And we just tell them it's all right on our website. All the cast vote records are there for people to try to replicate this process, and there have been some folks that have done exactly that. So I think that shows that all we're doing here is we're counting the ballots. The work was actually done by the voters. So this is just the representation and the reckoning of what that work meant on election day.
You said it's going to take 4 weeks. State the obvious for us on why this work is going to go reach into January.
Well, because you're talking about 300,000 ballots, everyone being examined by hand, and that takes a little bit of time. A little bit of time. A lot of bit of time.
Good.
Anyone else? All right.
So they're doing Hancock County first, because you had the ballots in.
Yeah, we had everything from Hancock County from that judge of probate recount last week.
So have you ever, or will you run a ranked choice total from the original count on Hancock County to compare to when you get a final result from this hand recount?
Now, we're not doing